Hi, I'm a real alcoholic. This is my personal study of the 12 steps and 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous in the 12 and 12. I'm doing tradition 3. Tradition 3 is recovery. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. So, the principle of tradition 3 is recovery. This tradition is packed with meaning for AA is really saying to every serious drinker, you are an AA member if you say so. You can declare yourself in, nobody can keep you out. No matter who you are, no matter how low you've gone, no matter how grave your emotional complications, even your crimes, we still can't deny you AA. We don't want to keep you out. We aren't a bit afraid you'll harm us, never mind how twisted or violent you may be. We just want to be sure that you get the same great chance for sobriety that we've had. So you're an AA member the minute you declare yourself. To establish this principle of membership took years of harrowing experience. Harrowing means extremely disturbing or distressing. In our early time, nothing seemed so fragile, so easily breakable as an AA group. Hardly an alcoholic we approached paid any attention. Most of those who did join us were like flickering candles in a windstorm. Time after time, their uncertain flames blew out and couldn't be relighted. Our unspoken constant thought was, which of us may be the next? A member gives us a vivid glimpse of those days. At one time, he says, every AA group had many membership rules. Everybody was scared witless that something or somebody would capsize the boat and dump us all back into the drink. Our foundation office asked each group to send in its list of protective regulations. The total list was a mile long. If all those rules had been in effect everywhere, nobody could have possibly joined AA at all, so great was the sum of our anxiety and fear. We were resolved to admit nobody to AA but that hypothetical class of people who were termed pure alcoholics. I can vouch for that because I was 30 years old when I came into AA. And there was nothing but a bunch of old white guys sitting around. And they did not want to hear anything about any drugs or any pills or any pot. If you weren't talking about alcohol specifically, you were free to leave. It was very prejudiced, let me tell you. Except for their guzzling and the unfortunate results thereof, there could have no other complications. So beggars, tramps, asylum inmates would be those who were committed for mental problems. Prisoners, queers, still using that word back then, plain crackpots, crazy people, I guess is what that would be, and fallen women were definitely out. Yes, sir, we cater only to the pure and respectable alcoholics. Any others would surely destroy us. Besides, if we took in these odd ones, what would decent people say about us? We built a fine mesh fence right around AA. So, there's a fear of losing what we they thought they had which is it's a very real fear. If you're trying to stay clean and sober, you don't want anything to screw it up, okay? And remember, this was written a long time ago, but some of these prejudices still exist in some of us, and we still need to be watchful, and we still need to look out. And one of the things that really I remember someone saying once was that an alcoholic's the only person who can look down his nose at everyone else while he's still laying in the gutter, and that's true. It really is. That self-righteousness is a big problem. And fear, we all got a problem with it. So I understand, it's maybe this sounds comical right now. Maybe you think we old timers were pretty intolerant. But I can tell you there was nothing funny about the situation then. We were grim. That means uninviting. Because we felt our lives and homes were threatened, and that was no laughing matter. Intolerant, you say? Well, we were frightened. Naturally, we began to act like most everybody does when afraid. After all, isn't fear the true basis of intolerance? There, I learned something. Yes, we were intolerant. How could we then guess that all those fears were to prove groundless, not based on reason? How could we know that thousands of these sometimes frightening people were to make astonishing recoveries and become our greatest workers and intimate friends? Unreasonable means fear that's not based on fact. Intolerant means not respecting beliefs, opinions, etc., different from one's own. Okay, back on page 141. Was it credible that AA was to have a divorce rate far lower than average? So that's 1952. In 1952, this was written. It's important to know these things, right? Yeah, this was written, the 12 and 12 was written in 1952. So if you look up the statistics of the percentages of couples who are married, divorce rates is different. So 50% of couples today cite alcohol as a factor of divorce. Is it 50%? Now, that's pretty big. My dog. Could we then foresee that troublesome people were to become our principal teachers of patience and tolerance? Let's break it down. Could we see that troublesome people were to become our main teachers of delayed gratification and endurance? Could any then imagine a society which would include every conceivable, imaginable kind of character and cut across every barrier of race, creed, politics, and language with ease? Why did AA finally drop all its membership rules, regulations? Why did we leave it to each newcomer to decide himself whether he was an alcoholic and whether he should join us? Why did we dare to say, contrary to the experience of society and government everywhere, that we would neither punish nor deprive any AA of membership, that we must never compel anyone to pay anything, believe anything, or conform to anything. And I want to, I've been going through these traditions, and this is, traditions are like really new to me. And so I came across a reading in As Bill Sees It, because it seemed like there was the same kind of underlying message. You can't keep people out of AA. Don't keep people out of AA. You know what I mean? And so I want to read this in conjunction with this step. It's As Bill Sees It, page 149. Implicit throughout AA's tradition is the confession that our fellowship has its sins. We admit that we have character defects as a society and that these defects threaten us continually. Our traditions are a guide to better ways of working and living, and they are to groups' survival and harmony what AA's 12 steps are to each member's sobriety and peace of mind. So that's what the traditions are saying. Keep us on our toes. Right there it says continually. We have to. Why did we dare to say? We neither punish nor deprive any of AA membership. The answer, now seen in Tradition 3, was simplicity itself. At last, experience taught us that to take away any alcoholic's full chance was sometimes to pronounce his death sentence and often to condemn him to endless misery. He dared to be judge, jury, and executioner of his own sick brother. Yeah. So, yeah. Again, that's why. Every alcoholic knows that's why. That's why you don't kick them out. They all know that. If you kick someone out, if you ostracize them, blackball them, if you try to make them feel like they're not good enough, or they're not welcome, and they leave AA, there's a chance they could die. And I know two that have passed out with a cigarette in their hand and burnt to death. As group after group saw these possibilities, they finally abandoned all membership regulations. Rule 62. Don't take anything too seriously. One dramatic experience after another clinched this determination, decided it, until it became our universal tradition. Universal in all groups. Here are two examples. On the AA calendar, it was year 2. In that time, nothing could be seen but two struggling, nameless groups of alcoholics trying to hold their faces up to the light. A newcomer appeared at one of these groups, knocked on the door, and asked to be let in. He talked frankly with the group's oldest member. He soon proved that his was a desperate case and that above all he wanted to get well. But he asked, "Will you let me join your group? Since I'm the victim of another addiction, worse stigmatized than alcoholism, you may not want me among you, or will you?" Stigmatized means disgraced, and he was a drug addict. There was the dilemma. Okay, dilemma means a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives, especially equally undesirable ones. And thank God that from the time I started in AA in 1996 to now, to 2024, that people don't have to say, "Oh, I'm a double winner. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Or you got people just now coming in that are not even alcoholics at all and coming in and saying they're just addicts, and that's fine. Who cares? You know what? We ain't got no room to judge anybody else. Oh, no. You got a finger up pointing someone else, you got three pointing back at you, and the thumb's pointing up to God. Who's the real judge? Not me. What should the group do? But, back then, yeah. The oldest member summoned two others and in confidence laid the explosive facts in their laps. Said he, "Well, what about it? If we turn this man away, he'll soon die. If we allow him in, only God knows what trouble he'll brew. What shall the answer be, yes or no?" At first, the elders could look only at the objections, the negatives. "We deal," they said, "with alcoholics only. Shouldn't we sacrifice this one for the sake of the many?" So went the discussion while the newcomer's fate hung in the balance. Then one of the three spoke in a very different voice. "What we are really afraid of," he said, "is our reputation. We are much more afraid of what people might say than the trouble this strange alcoholic might bring. As we've been talking, 5 short words have been running through my mind. Something keeps repeating to me, 'What would the master do?' Not another word was said. What more indeed could be said?" Overjoyed, the newcomer plunged into 12-step work. Tirelessly, he laid AA's message before scores of people. Since this was a very early group, these scores have since multiplied themselves into thousands. Never did he trouble anyone with this other difficulty. AA had taken its first step in the formation of Tradition 3. And this was the beginning of the formation of Narcotics Anonymous. This guy was the beginning. It doesn't matter who started the group. This was the first addict to come into Alcoholics Anonymous in 1952, I think. Not long after, the man with the double stigma, which is what you used to have to say so that people wouldn't tell you were in the wrong place, and they say you're in the wrong place. NA is right down the street. And you know what? That ain't right. Now that I know that ain't right, I can open this up instead of telling someone that's not right. I can go find the page and read it to them. It's not my idea. None of these are my ideas. I'm reading straight from the book. Okay? I've been doing the same thing for many years. And I still have the same problem for many years. I still have the same problem. Nobody wants, it's just, oh God, please help me. Okay. AA's other group received into its membership a salesman we shall call Ed, a power driver, this one, and brash as any salesman could ever be. So, I know I just looked up that word power driver. I must not have wrote it down. The type A personality, very forceful, and brash means self-assertive, noisy, in a rude way, kind of like me. He had at least an idea a minute on how to improve AA. These ideas he sold to fellow members with the same burning enthusiasm with which he distributed automobile polish. But he had one idea that wasn't so saleable. Ed was an atheist. His pet obsession was that AA could get along better without its God nonsense. He browbeat, which means to intimidate, everybody, and everybody expected that he'd soon get drunk. For at the time, you see, AA was on the pious side. Um, religiously, I don't know what that word I wrote down, but you know what it means. There must be a heavy penalty, it was thought, for blasphemy. And I guess blasphemy, when I looked it up, said disrespect to God. Okay, so atheist doesn't believe there is a God. And anyway, there's another one. But anyway, distressingly enough, Ed proceeded, "Stay sober." At length the time came for him to speak in a meeting. We shivered, for we knew what was coming. He paid a fine tribute to the fellowship. He told how his family had been reunited. He extolled the virtue of honesty, praised the virtue of honesty. He recalled the joys of 12-step work, and then he lowered the boom. Cried Ed, "I can't stand this God stuff. It's a lot of malarkey for weak folks." Malarkey's nonsense. This group doesn't need it, and I won't have it. To hell with it. A great wave of outraged resentment engulfed the meeting, covered, sweeping every member into a single resolve. Resolve is a decision. Out he goes. The elders led Ed aside. They said firmly, "You can't talk like this around here. You'll have to quit it or get out." With great sarcasm, Ed came back at them. "Now do tell, is that so?" He reached over to a bookshelf and took up a sheaf of papers. On top of them laid the foreword to the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Then, under preparation, he read aloud, "The only requirement for AA membership is the desire to stop drinking." Relentlessly, Ed went on, "When you guys wrote that sentence, did you mean it or didn't you?" Dismayed, the elders looked at one another, for they knew he had them cold, so Ed stayed. Ed not only stayed, he stayed sober month after month. The longer he kept dry, okay, and dry is self-will run riot without a higher power. That's a dry drunk. The longer he kept dry, the louder he talked against God. The group was in anguish. Anguish is a severe mental or physical pain or suffering. The group was in anguish so deep that all fraternal charity had vanished. Brotherly love, okay? That's what fraternal charity is. "When, oh when," groaned members to one another, "will that guy get drunk?" Quite a while later, Ed got a sales job which took him out of town. At the end of a few days, the news came in. He sent a telegram for money, and everybody knew what that meant. Then he got on the phone. In those days, we'd go anywhere on a 12-step job, no matter how unpromising. But this time, nobody stirred. Leave him alone. Let him try it by himself for once. Maybe he'll learn a lesson. About 2 weeks later, Ed stole by night into an AA member's house and, unknown to the family, went to bed. Daylight found the master of the house and another friend drinking their morning coffee. A noise was heard on the stairs. To their consternation, which is shock, they were surprised to see him there. To their consternation, Ed appeared. A quizzical, amused kind of smile on his lips, he said, "Have you fellows had your morning meditation?" They quickly sensed that he was quite in earnest, which means he's sincere. In fragments, his story came out. In a neighboring state, Ed had holed up in a cheap hotel. After all his pleas for help had been rebuffed, which means, they didn't help him, these words rang in his fevered mind. They have deserted me. I have been deserted by my own kind. This is the end. Nothing is left. As he tossed in his bed, his hand brushed the bureau nearby, touching a book. Opening the book, he read. It was a Gideon Bible. Ed never confided any more of what he saw and felt in that hotel room. It was the year 1938. He hasn't had a drink since. So 38 to, what did I say, 52, 48. Yeah, 38, 48, 14 years. Nowadays, when old-timers who know Ed foregather, they exclaim, what if we had actually succeeded in throwing Ed out for blasphemy? What would have happened to him and all the others he later helped? So the hand of providence, God, good orderly direction, but providence means God, early gave us the sign that any alcoholic is a member of our society when he says so. So now is the end, right? Life or death, that we get a God of our own understanding. It's a matter of life or death that we get a God of our own understanding and not someone else's understanding. And it's a matter of life or death when we judge other people. It's a matter of life and death when we, in Alcoholics Anonymous groups, get into cliques and decide that someone else isn't who they want to be. So they're unwelcoming. So, it used to be there would someone be standing at the door and shake everybody's hand when they walked in and go get them a cup of coffee, and everyone knew everyone, and everyone, there was just more brotherly love than there is now. And let me say, I'd love to go to more meetings, but I have to walk 2 blocks to get to my vehicle. And I know someone who drives right by here, but no one really wanted to give me rides. None of the women anyway. Until God told me to do this video of all 12 steps and all 12 traditions. I'm trying really hard to finish what it is that God told me to do. And it's not getting any easier. So now maybe you can understand that Alcoholics Anonymous, although it does not keep us sober, it's really God. It is important. I would like to have people that wanted me to go to meetings, but there's a lot of, that part in how it works. It says if you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Some people got that wrong. Okay, if you want what we have doesn't mean take our husbands, take our vehicles, take our possessions and try to steal our light and dim our light. That's not what that means. If you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it, means what we have had are deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our life and our way of thinking is what we have had. If you want what we have is a life of sober, happy, joyous and free sobriety life. That's what that means. It doesn't mean to be jealous and try to take or have what someone else has. This is a spiritual program. It's not a material program. It's not a dating service. And it's not a popularity club. I can vouch for that because I'm not very popular in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll tell you that because I think God humbled me plenty. God knows. I don't need anyone else to know, okay? But God knows. And, humiliation and trying to humiliate people and make them feel low is not the same as humility. Humiliation is not the same as humility. Trying to make another human being feel as if they are not good enough is not the same as helping them to get a right perspective of their self in relationship to God and the world. So humility is a right way of me thinking about my relationship with God and the world. Okay? And that's not something that I don't know. Maybe there are a few old timers that can do that, are able to help someone get there, to see ourselves in the right perspective and get us down to our right size. But we all got ego problems, whether you're in Alcoholics Anonymous or not. We're all going to bounce from, I don't feel good enough. I feel maybe better than everybody. Or they used to say, the old timers used to say we're egomaniacs with inferiority complex. We either think that we're the shit or a piece of shit. And nobody needs to make another human being feel like they're unwelcome or they're a piece of shit. So that's as Tanya sees it right there. And I just not going to be very comfortable around people like that. And so if they're trying to look down their nose at other people, I've always been that person that's going to say, hey, man, you're not the president of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? And, stop. Just stop. You can't say, oh, all I did was steal. At least I didn't cheat on my spouse. And then the other person says, well, all I did was cheat on my spouse. At least I didn't, kill somebody. And that person says, well, at least I didn't, we're not, and everybody's comparing whose sins were the worst and still judging each other. And it's not helpful. It's really not. It's hurtful to, it's not just hurtful to everyone that's in a group, okay? It's hurtful to everyone who will come to the group later in the future. And it's hurtful to, or should I say, disrespectful to the memory of everyone who's come before you, including Bill and Bob. So I was, and still am, very blessed that I have had sponsors. I had a sponsor who was one of, got it from the old timers, and it was, unconditional love and acceptance right where you're at. You don't have to change anything about yourself, just a little bit at a time, and because they unconditionally loved and accepted me without saying, oh, you got to do this first before we like you. It saved my life. I think that takes a lot of spiritual maturity and a lot of healing and a lot of growth to get there. So I've always been for the underdog because I am the underdog. Don't let this face fool you. I've been through hell, you know, and I hope that we can just have a little bit more compassionate understanding for everybody. That's all I really want. So, wish you the best of luck. If you need any help, you can find Alcoholics Anonymous groups near you. You can pick up the phone and call and talk to somebody at central office 24 hours a day. Um, if you don't like the group you're at, then go to lots of different groups until you find the one that, that you fit into. And if you don't fit in, keep going anyway. Go to spite them. Stay sober to show them. That's what I do. Yeah. Well, God bless you all.